The best thing about making money for me is giving it away. I mean, people like helping people. When you can help somebody out, it's an amazing feeling. The bigger you can do that, the better the feeling is. Matt TheRiot grew up in Abbey, Louisiana, just outside the 9th Ward. Started going to Holy Cross about 1990. My first year at Holy Cross in the 8th grade. Mom was a teacher, Dad was a mechanic. Dad used to work extra jobs to pay my tuition. 3 months into going to school, my dad and I were working on a car one night, and the whole back of the car goes up in flames with my dad under it. And I'm sitting in the driver's seat doing a brake job in an old car, pumping the brakes, and next thing you know, the flames are everywhere. Jumped out of the car, ran, called 911, turned around, and my dad is standing like 10, 15 yards from me in flames. So I was 14. So that was my first couple months at Holy Cross. Put him out, drove him to the hospital. My dad was in ICU for about a month and a half. Woke up kind of right before Christmas. Right on my 15th birthday, he could like recognize who I was again. And I'm sure that had an impact on me because like my dad took those extra jobs to pay my tuition. Dad recovered. 5 years later, graduated Holy Cross in '95. Made a decision I was never going to go into debt or have my parents go into debt over me again or my education again. About 3 years ago, had gotten married, had 7 kids, had 5 kids at one time going to private schools. It was impossible for us to afford private school for all the kids. I remember like my first son had a scholarship for De La Salle. That's how he went to De La Salle. My next 2 sons had scholarships to Jesuit, and it was all because of donors that were there long before they were. That was my experience in putting my kids in school. Couldn't afford for any of my kids to go to Holy Cross. About 3 years ago, almost went broke, maybe the second time, and I decided that I needed to make a change in my life, and I hired my first coach. I was tired of being a fat dad and wanted to be a better father, better husband. Lost 40 pounds, started working on being physically fit. Started working on my marriage a lot more, started working on my relationship with my kids a lot more. Was trying to get better at business. I felt like I was doing all the right things. Just shy of a year into it, the guy I went to high school with died, burned in hell. I was at his funeral. And I hadn't seen Burnell in probably like 15 years. He had like a wife and 2 kids, and he was my age, just like 46 years old. It really started to affect me. It was like, I got to do something better than what I'm doing now, because if I left tomorrow, my family would be screwed. I had been in touch with another business coach, Nick Alfano, and he had an event coming up in the end of February. Called Nick up. I said, hey, this is my business. I need help growing my business. What can you help me do? He goes, well, I'll show you, I can show you how to double your business in 90 days.
So yeah, my name's Nick Alfano. I'm a serial entrepreneur for 28 years. Former attorney, built a couple pretty cool companies, a couple 8-figure businesses along the way. Probably the one thing that I do well is help men process the stories that are holding them back. Married been with my wife for 25, 26 years. I think we got married about 10 years in, got 3 beautiful babies. They're all grown now. So now I serve men. I work with male entrepreneurs married with kids. I help them scale their business, I guess. But what we really do is just make them better fathers, better human beings, better husbands, just better people. And our whole mission statement is impact over income, which is actually how I met Matt with that message. So
I was like, all right, what's the price? I need to be there.
So anyway, he hit me up and he's like, hey, I really want to go to the Vegas one. And one thing that really stands out about Matt is he wanted to bring his son.
And I want to bring my son too, because my son wanted to start his own business.
And there's probably only 2 people in 5 years I've been doing this that want to show their sons this game, because there could be an argument they're too young to really process this. But if we can teach the young ones, which is why I love what he's doing, is then I don't got to deal with them at 35, 45. I met Matt because he was very persistent. He did everything he could to make sure he was in the room, asking the right questions, and everything that we talked about was, how can I take this back to New Orleans and just help people? How can I help the youth? How can I help people? And that was a rare mindset for me.
And I quickly found that, the way to financial freedom is not, for me at least, is not working for somebody else, but it's building something that's your own, that you control, and you can steer the ship.
So I believe the quality of a man's life is 100% related to the quality of questions he's willing to ask himself. So most guys don't know how to ask themselves powerful questions.
February 29th, 2024, I'm sitting in the front row. Nick walks up to me and he goes,
what's your why? Why are you doing this? What's your target for 90 days?
I'm like, well, my goal. I want to double my business.
Cool, standard canned answer. And I can respect that, but why do you want it? Is it because Instagram says that's success? Because is that dollar amount going to affirm you in your socials? And so I come to Matt, I was like, why do you want to double your revenue?
What do you mean why? He goes, got bills to pay, got kids to put through college, support my family.
I hate that answer. Because I think if you have a wife and kids, you don't get to use that as your why. That's just mandatory. That's non-negotiable now. So for me, if you really want to build big things, you got to have a why that's outside of your four walls. You got to have a why bigger than your standard non-negotiable like duties as a man, as a husband, as a father. So that's when he told me the whole story about his friend passing away. And
he goes, it's not a big enough reason for me to help you. He goes, take money out of the equation. He goes, what's the next thing you do? And the first thing that popped into my mind, I was like, I'd start a foundation for my kids' friends. And I'd make sure that they get to finish school with their friends. I would make it my mission in life to make sure that, their mom never has to worry about a tuition payment.
He just wants to help more kids like have an opportunity that they basically can't afford, because he knows what this school did for him to change his life. He knows what it meant to his friend. And he's like, well, if I double my revenue, I can get my family right, which is cool, but what I can really do is just help more young kids win and have an opportunity that they might never have.
And he said, okay, that I will help you with. And we got to make it happen in 90 days. And I was like, okay, let's do it. I asked Nick, I said, hey, is it okay if we change? And he goes, yeah, sure. And so I came up with the idea. I was like, all right, I'm gonna start my foundation, and I'm gonna start a fund, and I'm gonna call it the Highland Scholars Fund. And I had a kilt for my daughter's Irish dance competition like a month before, I was still in the suitcase. But I came up with that idea, and I was like, all right, from now on, every client that ever sees me again is gonna see me showing up in boots, a kilt, and this shirt.
I like to say I get a lot of credit for the kilt that he's probably wearing right now as we film this.
One of the things like I took away from Nick's conference is he has this talk on like how to show up different.
Show up different can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. Like for me, it's really, we teach this concept of becoming the observer, and how to like observe how you're showing up for your kids, how you're showing up for everybody in this world. And then more importantly, as a result of how you're showing up, what results are you getting? And if you're not happy with the results, then you got to show up different. You have to bring a different version of you to the scene. And I remember being like, he's wearing the kilt. But then I was like, you know what? This is just who my man is. Yeah.
Probably take that kind of to the extreme more than most people.
One thing I'll say, and I think it embodies the kilt, is he don't care what people think, man. And to me, that's admirable quality, because a lot of us, go through this life and we're worried like, oh man, does the shoes match the belt, match the hat? What are people going to say to it? Like,
and the first thing we talk about is the foundation. Shirt stands for two things: the cost of greatness and impact over income.
We became so obsessed with this concept, show up different. I'd like to think this is what birthed the kilt. You know what I mean? And so now when he walks into a room, when he walks into a conversation, he's always thinking, how can I show up different? So how can you help more people and put that over your money? Because the more people you help, the more money you make. Right. And you don't even have to ask for money if you do it right. You just keep leaning into people. You want to make $1 million, go help 1 million people. And then add enough value to their life where you can ask for $1 in return. Wear the kilt, own the kilt, wear the shirt, explain your story, tell your story, and just really just speak to people's heart before you even talk about anything money related.
One of my clients referred me to like one of his best friends. They've been friends since grammar school. They're both real successful, doing really well. He was also my first donor. And I showed up just like I am today. And I was like, they started asking me questions about, the partnership and the fund, how everything works. I was like, all right, well, let me back up a minute. Let me tell you the story, the full story. The reason my company exists is to support the scholarship fund. My friend died. It's for his 2 kids. These are my terms. They're like, that's incredible. It became more about funding the scholarships than it did about making money. It's like, so I think my lens of like just looking at the business in general changed, because the way I approach it now, and I have since that day, is like every new client I have is like another kid I can put through school. It's like, if that's your focus, yeah, the money's gonna follow. If you'd like to help the Highland Scholars Fund educate more kids, then please go to hsfnola.com and click the donate button.